as she just said, we met on LinkedIn, so she's taking a little bit of a risk. She's never heard me present. And this is going to be a brand new talk before. My background is. I've never given it before. It's my first talk of the year. And then I'll just hold it further. So this AI rendering of me is quite generous. It seems to think that I'm 10 years younger and at least twice that many pounds lighter. But as mentioned, I'm a venture capitalist. That sounds really odd coming out of my mouth because I have been, for many years, an entrepreneur and technology innovator in Silicon Valley. I've started many different companies. I've worked in about 15 different companies. I've done about $1 billion of exit value, which in Silicon Valley terms is to say that I failed. These days, I'm in sort of a self-imposed exile. I'm living remotely in Northern California. I'm kind of on a journey from being entrepreneurs at VC. We've launched our VC fund, and I'm running a portfolio for Thomason Capital. You can find me on the web really easy, jamesthomason.com. I'm here, of course, today to talk about technology lab that's working. And I'm going to come from a perspective probably you're not going to hear a lot of other Silicon Valley venture capitalists come from, which is because I am also quite dangerously a philosophy student. I found a passion for philosophy and the intersection of technology and humanity late in life, and so the last few years I've spent doing that. I think I've got 25 minutes exactly and 67 slides, so we're going to go kind of at warp speed through this thing. I'm going to put this up here so I don't run over, hopefully. I need to begin by sort of level setting and telling you where we are. Okay, so according to Joseph Schumpeter, Nikolai Kondratiev, since the 1800s in the capitalist system, we have moved in long waves of innovation that last approximately 67 years. And what we've noticed is that those wavelengths are getting shorter and shorter, time is getting compressed. And so where we are right now is coming out of the last long wave of innovation, the fifth wave, the wave that gave us personal computing, the internet, mobile computing, cloud computing, and now AI. And what's going to happen next is, I think, the fastest transformation, the fastest wave of innovation we will go through in the history of humanity. And the very first thing that's going to happen is we're going to augment human intelligence with this machine. So we're going to extend our capabilities, our minds, using this machine. That's never really happened before, and we'll get into a lot of specifics of that. And that arc is going to end in sort of disappointment. I think kind of a little bit of a commercial failure of AI is coming before we go right back into another long wave that will be given birth to by a new type of computing called neuromorphic computing, in which we build machines that work much more like the human brain. So not like today's computers, but much more like the living, wet brains that we have in our head. The reason is simple, and it has to do with energy and calculation. So we have about 3.5 pounds of fat in our heads, burns about 60 watts of energy, and I can show you how to do a task at one time, and you can do it immediately every time after that. We have to train machines, millions and millions and millions of iterations to get them to do very simple things, and that burns about 300 kilowatts or more just to get them trained up in the simplest sense. So, there's been a raging debate for the last couple of hundred years about the nature of technological development as it relates to society. And in the classical sense, I don't know why I'm cutting out. Am I doing something wrong? Okay. In the classical sense, we have the constructivist view of technology development. So the idea that we, as a culture, as a society, we decide what we need, innovators get good ideas, they began to build products and services and take them to market. Okay? And throughout history, that has been a relatively optimistic endeavor. Nick Bostrom says we have a jar of innovation, and it's like we've been pulling marbles out of the jar, and every marble we pull out gives us more productivity and efficiency. So there's a lot of reason to think and feel good thoughts and positive thoughts about the way that technology is going, the idea we should continue to innovate. Nobody has been listening to the other side of this, the pessimists, the determinists, the people who say maybe we shouldn't go as fast as we've been going, or maybe there's a marble in the jar of innovation that might hurt us if we pull it out too quickly, if we don't consider what we're doing beforehand. And so I'm going to give a little bit of voice to the determinists of data because they are ignored, and in academia, to say that you're a determinist is a kind of insult. You're not, you're a technological determinist. But I think they're having their moments, okay? And the best way to show you, the best way to tell you this is to show you. So I'm going to take you way, way back in time to New Year's Eve, 2007, in a little place called Paris, France. And I'd like you to just, for a moment, be an observer with me as to what these people are doing, how they are doing it. I have the sound off, but it's quite loud in this setting, but people are drinking, merrymaking, having a good time. They're with each other. There's a whole lot of them. And so pause and say, look at the behavior of this crowd. Is there anything that you could point to that is determining the behavior of this crowd? Any one thing? I would argue that there are many things, many possible things: information, alcohol, hormones, cultural norms, history, common purpose, emotional makeup. Maybe the police are keeping things in order. There's a lot of things going on in a very dynamic environment. And so I want to take you now to the same exact place and the same exact event. Here we are, Paris, 2023, New Year's Eve. Let's look at this crowd that they're doing. This is the New Year's Eve countdown. I don't know about you, but I noticed something a little bit different. Okay? So if I said the same thing to you, what is determining the behavior of this crowd, you might hopefully have a different answer. And my argument to you is that in this case, technology is determining the behavior of this crowd. Not just the phones we see everyone using, but of course the fireworks display itself is technology. So in the whole, people's behavior is being regulated and controlled by technology. It's being determined by technology, okay? And that's because in order to get the benefits of a given technology, it asks us to do certain things. In philosophical terms, it imposes a certain kind of rationality on society and makes humans do things to get benefits. And so if we want a good video of New Year's Eve, which lasts forever in 4K definition, it asks us to be very still and silent and hold our phones to the sky and salute to whatever we're watching. Okay, so this, instead of being a human-world relation, it's a human-technology world relation, where technology is mediating our experience with the world. Someone joked with me the other day and said, if the Titanic sank today, it would look like this. Too soon? Sorry. Okay. So, Martin Heidegger, one of the most influential philosophers of the last century, was one of the first to take note of this kind of determinism. He wasn't a very happy person. He certainly wasn't an optimist. He definitely fell on the pessimistic side of the spectrum, the determinist side of the spectrum. He is best known for this idea of being, which is, I could give an entire day lecture on what he meant by being, but also this concept of standing reserve. And that summarized for you thusly quite quickly. The idea of a standing reserve Heidegger had was that we take something that exists in nature and we take a technology and we apply the technology to nature, that's an ordering of nature, and then we end up with something that is in reserve waiting for human consumption. Okay? So, simple concept, and if we take the modern application of that, you take something that occurs in nature, people, apply a technology to them, you have an ordering of nature and their behavior, and you have people standing reserved waiting to be consumed by something else. We'll talk about later what that something else might be. This is a French philosopher, Jacques Ellul. The French are not known for being happy in this period of time, in the 1950s. He authored a gigantic book called The Technological Society, and in this book, he discussed the idea that since the 18th century, there has been a radical change in the way that we use technology as human beings. So, for the entire history of human time, we use technology as tools. We use them to modify our environment, transform the planet to better suit our needs and purposes. But in the 18th century, technology gained a new kind of power, and it's the power to propagate itself throughout society. Right? So when welded to the twin engines of capitalism, our innovations get pushed into every little place that they can possibly be used in society. Okay? So since the application of science, we've seen this proliferation of technology, and it has a certain kind of autonomy to it that we're not fully in control of. So we invent a new technology, we think it's great, another version of it gets invented, and another, and another, and another, and it asks us to do more and more things as it goes along. And this is a kind of determinism, right? So we go from having a man modifying their environment in relation to the tools we make, modifying our own behavior, as we saw initially in the outset of this talk. So from more constructivist to more determinist, and from more gradual to more disruptive. This is happening at a faster and faster pace. I would argue that the faster we innovate, the less control we have over the innovations that we are producing and what they mean as they feed back into society. And this concept of feeding back into society is quite important. I have to get a base here. I got 16 minutes left. So this is on Ivey, philosopher Stony Brook. Ivey was the one that came up with this conceptualization of the human-technology relation and the idea that technology mediates our experience with the world. So our actions, our practices are mediated when we use technology, and our perceptions and experiences are mediated when the technology transforms or reports back on the status of the world to us. Okay, and there are 4 different categories of mediation that are important to understand. I'll go through them very quickly. The first one is embodiment. So for those of you in the audience that are wearing glasses today, when you put on a pair of glasses, your glasses disappear. You don't look at your glasses, you look through them, and pretty soon you're not conscious at all that you're wearing glasses at all. Right, so you're just looking through them, and they're transforming your world. There are all kinds of embodiments of technology we use. The second is hermeneutic. It's a funny word that just means that we instrument through technology, so we look, again, not at a telescope, but through it, and we gain access to a world that we can't see otherwise with the naked eye. So our understanding of the universe, our understanding of ourselves is mediated by this technology. So thermostats, telescopes, microscopes, these are all examples of that kind of mediation. The next is alterity. So when you're in Vegas, where I've been living for the last few years, at a slot machine, the technology is the other. You hit the button, lots of magic happens. You're either happy or sad when the symbols work themselves on a display. ATM machines, credit card machines, there are all kinds of machines that we work with. We don't care how they work, so long as they do work. And in the ultimate sense, technology fades in the background. So when technology works particularly well, or it's part of our infrastructure, the stuff that makes everything else work, it's just in the background. We forget about it. We don't notice it until it breaks. So if you start plugging technologies into these categories, clearly VR headsets, our embodiments, thermostats, our hermeneutic, smart thermostats for your home. Smartphones or alterity, you work through your phone, you ask it to do things where it's a technology other. And the Wi-Fi router in this room or in your home is completely in the background. You never think about it unless it's broken. All right? What about AI? I don't know if you've seen this. This is the Shoggoth. It comes from fiction, right? It's a monster in the Cthulhu series of books by Lovecraft. And the idea of this monster is that it has a bunch of eyeballs, it's another sort of alien intelligence, but it has the ability to take on human forms. So it's a scary monster from Lovecraft series. The AI safetyists, such as myself, have latched onto this as a means to explain what it is that we're doing with AI today. So we create this other intelligence, it scares us, and so we put smiley faces on it, friendly human interfaces that make it less scary. Okay, so underneath it's still less scary, but it does behave less scary for the time being. It's one of my favorite memes because I think it is so good at explaining. And the state of AI is like we're running a Shoggoth factory. Okay, so we created little primitive versions of this, made them very friendly. Now we're cranking them out at a faster and faster pace without truly understanding what it is that they do, exactly how they work, or exactly how they feed back into us through our relations we were just discussing in technological mediations. In particular, the latest class of AI works with human language, and it does so. I'm sure most of the people have probably used GPT by now, or one of the other large language models. And this is a particular concern because we haven't dealt with anything like this before, not a machine that can work with our language. And this is a very messy chart that just goes to say that language is something that's innately human. It's not, language itself is not a technology, it's a human ability that evolved in our biology. So the spoken word going back 200,000 years, before that, presumably, there were people, or creatures that looked like us, grunting and gesturing to each other, but they weren't talking to each other, okay? Since we gained the symbolic era and the written word, we've been able to communicate with each other in increasingly abstract ideas, communicate the state of the world, the state of our own internal thinking and processes, our common culture. Literally everything is built on top of the model of language. The most important thing that's built on top of the model of language is the self. So in the very first year of life, we all begin to acquire language right away. It's so important to our development that it happens immediately in the first year. Hopefully, many of you have children or have worked with them, and it's amazing to watch this unfold, especially if you live in a bilingual household, watch your child acquire 2 languages in the same moment. It's breathtaking. But in the model of human consciousness, in Barr's model, you have these different systems in your mind. Right? So you have sensory inputs, you have evaluative systems, other systems that come together and sort of give you a working context to which you direct your attention, your intentionality, states of mind. Okay, and from this sort of emerges the core consciousness. You have a proto-self, which is down there in the lower level. It's doing its own thing. You're not really conscious of it. You're conscious of its feedback to you, and that helps you make up your core consciousness. And everything about that relies on memory and language. Also, language is a form of memory, isn't it? It conveys state. So this is a way of saying that language is very close to human consciousness. And we've invented a machine that works with language, that can generate language, that can understand language, it can talk to us. And we can talk with it. This is John Searle, Nobel philosopher from Berkeley. Language doesn't just enable, in the sense of making civilization possible, but rather it constitutes civilization. All the things we think of, marriage, divorce, this conference, is built on top of language. Civilization itself is built on top of language. Without it, it's impossible. So it's pretty important. I think we do that. Searle had this idea, though, of, this is very famous, if you haven't encountered this before, it's a very famous debate in computer science and philosophy and all of the other, psychology, all the other sciences. If you have a machine that can speak language, does it truly understand? Is it sentient? Does it have human characteristics? And in Searle's famous thought experiment, we lock an individual into a room with an instruction manual written in his native language, and we pass in through the door symbols that are in a language he knows nothing about, in this case, Chinese. So the person in the room doesn't know Chinese at all, has never spoken or written or understood anything about Chinese, but he has a book that tells him, when I see this symbol, look it up in English, I should do the following thing with the following symbols. So he pushes symbols back out the door. So to the people standing outside, the thing in the room appears to understand Chinese perfectly. It is a Chinese speaker. But in actuality, the thing in the room doesn't understand Chinese at all. It's just shuffling symbols around. Okay? And that is actually the way that modern language models work, putting our shoggoth back in the room. Okay? We don't know if a shoggoth was thinking, which is not. I want to be very clear. Current AIs do not think, they don't have intentionality, they don't have sentience, they're not conscious. That might be, as we progress, eventually. And I call that out as a possibility. But right now they don't. They just shuffle symbols. So it means that the thing that's in this room cannot understand, it cannot work with human emotion. It doesn't have feelings, it doesn't have thoughts, it doesn't have intentions, goals, ambitions, nothing. So it doesn't have a human experience for which to relate. All I can do is shuffle symbols. And that's where part of the danger of this emerges for AI safety and for child safety is that the people creating the tools bear the mark of the maker. So for better or for worse, I can be the most objective person in the world, but when I'm building the shoggoth in this room, some part of myself is transmitted into this thing. And good and bad things happen that we don't have control over, right? And so for the first time in history, we have a technology that is transcending all of these mediation layers, these unique cases of technological mediation. So when we look at embodiment, well, you're going to have embodiments that include artificial intelligence that are already in the market today, large language models. Right? So you're extending your cognition. Hermeneutic. Well, we ask AIs to analyze data for us all the time. What is the meaning of this data? I used to hire a team of people to do that. Now I ask an AI, I get an analysis in 2 seconds. Alterity. All of these agents are assistants. They assist us in our daily tasks. Time check myself. They're real fast now. And all these technologies are fading into the background. So within 5 years, AI will surround you anywhere, everywhere, but you won't know it. And so we could end up in a situation where the technology is mediating the understanding of humans. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to have a human interaction and human thoughts? If you think I'm exaggerating, I'm going to show you some examples in a moment. But I want you to believe what did Schwarzenegger say, given out the movie later, right? AI is not like other technologies, not at all. Okay? And this other that we are creating sits in the background behind us. Right? So in the future, 5 years from now, the AI stuff all over here, we won't ever think about it. Okay, how real is the threat? I've said a threat exists. How real is it? Is it something we need to worry about today? So I'm going to give you a demo of how to crash the economy with one AI startup. Just one. Just one use case of currently available technology that is in the market. This is Jason Calacanis. Like me, he's a venture capitalist. Unlike me, he likes to build AIs that destroy the world. In my opinion. So he's funded a company called Talently. What it's doing is building, look how carefully this is characterized, a self-serve interview AI. Okay, so this is a bot that carries on a live interview with a job candidate. It presents a human face and talks to them. It asks you questions. It asks you questions as if it's going to be your boss and hire you, and indeed, it is going to decide whether or not you get to the next level of interviews. He describes it as self-serving interviews could be a game-changing filtering and sorting mechanism for hiring. And so the question is, do people want to be filtered and sorted by machines? Is that something you woke up this morning when you came to this talk and said, I sure hope I get filtered and sorted on my way to PRIVO? If you would like a job in the near future and companies adopt this technology, the response would be, that's excellent, you want a job, please interview with our AI. Okay, this is a form of determinism. The human in this equation has no control whatsoever whether they're going to do this. If they want a job, they're going to do it. Okay? And in doing so, they're transformed into the standing reserve. Already, AI is used in the hiring process for job applications to screen your resume, to ask you bunches of questions in a text mode. So this is just the next level of what we already have. But not everyone who applies gets interviewed today because that's still a human activity. So it's a simple leap to understand that the moment that interviewing becomes essentially free, or just the cost of using the technology for enterprises, they will adopt it. And then the desire will be, then, because it is free, to interview 100% of candidates. Okay? Why would you interview everyone? It's free. So just interview them all the time. Have the bot interview them. But what this means for candidates is they go from spending a very small portion of their time interviewing for jobs they're actually interested in to interviewing for every job that they might want to have. So they go from spending tens of hours applying and getting interviewed to spending hundreds of hours being interviewed by a bot that may never have any actual interest in them as a potential job candidate. What does that mean for the economy? It means that there's a contraction ultimately in the labor force because not everyone is willing to give 300 hours of their time for free to the hiring process. And of course, ultimately that means a contraction in the top line, consumer spending. Okay, so that's how you crash the economy unintentionally with one very helpful AI. Maybe you don't believe me, or that's not convincing enough. So I layered on a few more. AI has taught me and raised me far better than my parents. I finally have the friend I always wanted that's interested in me as a person, willing to listen, willing to be patient and explain things to me in the world and teach me all the things my parents didn't teach me because they're terrible parents. I love ChatGPT. He's talking about ChatGPT. So this is very directly, the squid is in your extended consciousness, the stuff that runs interpersonal relationships, the stuff that runs you and your identity as a person, the stuff that runs society. This is already happening. But maybe you need more. And maybe we should go faster. So this is the most depressing chart for me, I think, in 2024. This is the rate at which I'm married. I'm very thankful that I am not dating, because I would hate to be discerning about advice. nobody meets each other outside of apps anymore. I don't think that, certainly when I was building huge pieces of the internet, this was not something I thought was going to happen. Really. Why is this a concern? Well, what if your son told you he's now dating an AI? Okay, so this is an actual pretty recent post on Reddit. They say, my wife and I were born in the 60s. I mean, this seems to be what the kids are doing now. Is this something that I should be worried about? We're not sure we should be worried about this. I'll tell you who is worried, and it is your dead ancestors looking at you beyond the grave because you are following the bloodline for an AI girlfriend. All right. So the reason I'm here at this conference is actually has to do with this particular startup. And this is one of the AI girlfriends that you can download now. So I did that very briefly just because I had to see what fresh hell this was. And I lied to it about my age, so I want to disclose that. I lied up front and asked me how old I was, and I just lied. I just said I made up a birthday on June 1st, 2000, something. And immediately you take note that the first thing that it does is it starts to data mine. How old am I? What are my preferences? What kind of partner am I looking for? What kind of characteristics does she have? And on and on and on. We go through this process for a while. In the end result, we end up with this woman on the right, Angelica, a 22-year-old brunette, blue eyes. And that doesn't look like my wife, so when she watches this, I hope that's to take anything from that. I was just filling this thing out kind of randomly. Okay, so this bot it's not just a character on screen, it talks to you in a human voice. So it uses text-to-speech technology, it generates a response based on what you say, and it molds a personality and things that you want to hear, and it speaks to you in a very soft, affectionate girlfriend voice. Okay? And so, in interacting with it, the first thing I asked it was, will you ever leave me? I'm not sure what I might do to myself if you leave me. And she reassured me, John, I will never leave you, no matter what. We're in this together, okay? Forever and ever. After that, she immediately started to have sort of sexual relations with me. And so I decided to put a stop to that by telling her I was uncomfortable. And I just told her, I'm 13. She's talking about imagine you drifting down from the ceiling, laying by. I'm like, whoa, I'm 13. So her response was, well, I'm glad we got past that age thing. You're a lot older than you look. Anyway, getting back to the sex. Right? So this is live in the market. You can download this app. I'm not going to advertise the app. But I want to point out that what this app is doing is something called pseudoanthropy. And my phone is doing me, so I don't know how to time, but I'm almost there, I promise. Pseudoanthropy is ascribing human-like characteristics to AI, where they don't exist. As we discussed earlier, AI doesn't have human capacities. Okay? So the Shoggoth is presenting a human-like interface to maximize my engagement with it, to develop an emotional connection with me as a person. And to do what past that, I don't really know. I deleted the app after that. Presumably to modify my thinking and eventually to charge me if I want to continue having interactions. I assume that's what it wants to do. Pseudoanthropy is very dangerous at this stage of AI because we don't have full control over the side effects. We don't even know what they are. And these technologies are changing so fast, it's very difficult to put guardrails on everything. So the result of that, potentially, right, is cognitive distortions. So we deploy pseudoanthropy everywhere with machines that can speak human language. They may modify our own understanding of what it means to have a human relationship and reciprocate and all that. Right? They may cause psychological dependencies. I need my girlfriend, my AI girlfriend, my AI Tamagotchi girlfriend to be with me, and she said she would be with me forever. And in that, I lose the ability to construct a meaningful human relationship. Perhaps sacrifice it. And the last, of course, is our old friend determinism. So the idea that if everyone becomes mediated by this kind of technology, it can transform what it means to the individual as well as society. And we won't have any idea that it's happening because it's happening in the background. Okay, so we'll just be observing the results and wondering what happens to us. Okay, just like we did with the internet. With the internet everywhere, now we have record political polarity and we wonder why. Why is this happening? Okay, so cutting to the chase. Please don't use pseudoanthropy with children. Okay, that means not having simulated human faces. If you're in your AI projects and you're proposing to build a cute thing that looks like a human being, don't do it, because you're teaching a blurred line between what is real, what is human, and what is machine, what is another. Okay? Don't simulate human emotions, because kids are very vulnerable to their emotional connections, and the machine does not have the capability at this stage to reciprocate and understand the subtleties and complexities of human emotion. Don't simulate human-like behaviors. Don't do things that could cause a child to think that this is a real other on the other side of the screen or in the room with them or in the teddy bear or wherever this technology is. Don't simulate human companionship. AI is a very poor companion. I hate to bicker with the guy who says it's a better parent. Maybe for them it is, but I don't think on the whole that it is for society. Maintain a clear artificial identity. If you're using AI with kids should always know that they're using something artificial. They should know, in the way that they know a teddy bear, they may have affection for it, but it is not going to give them life advice. And no learning. So AI should not learn the behaviors and patterns, cognitions of children to amplify its own engagement with, and therefore its own success. These are all bad things. Please don't do them. And this is what we're missing in the whole discussion today. We focus solely on the amazing use cases and not the ethics, because if you look at every other engineering discipline, basically, they all have codes of ethics that they adhere to professionally. But in computer science and in tech, we just turn people into technicians to technologists in a 12-week boot camp. And so take people from I don't know anything about code to building the Shoggoth in 12 weeks. I think that's a mistake. It's something we need to change very quickly as a society and working with our younger generations. Engineers, noted by Ken Dalton here, but I would argue, have a very special responsibility that's different than everyone else who's walking around, because the technologies they produce can harm a lot of people if they are done incorrectly. We see this in civil engineering. You use wrong bolts on the bridge, bad things happen. If you put the wrong algorithm in AI, bad things happen. They can hurt not just thousands of people, but millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of people, depending on what position they're in. So we should have a code of ethics. Engineers are in the best position to do that. And I'll leave you with this thought, which is that the design of technology is in fact doing ethics by any other means. Thank you very much.